Please welcome back your MCs, Laura Taylor and John Carroll.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope each of you had a very productive morning in your breakout sessions and also visiting the vendor exhibit hall. I know I spent time in the vendor exhibit hall today and met with Major Schneider at Bespin booth, who talked some really cool things about digital university and also spoke about mobile apps, which is really neat. I also grabbed quite a bit of swag, but I'm not going to mention which companies because our attorney here is going to get me on an ethics violation. John, you're muted.
Old COVID habits.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, and I had the chance to visit Air University. If you haven't gotten some of their stickers, they have an amazing event, the LEDX Leadership Conference on Social Innovation, coming up right here in Montgomery. Sounds like an amazing time. So many great vendors. Go check them out. But enough about vendor booths. It's time to introduce our next keynote speaker. The Lieutenant General Robert Skinner is the Director of the Defense Information Systems and the Commander, Joint Force Headquarters, Department of Defense Information Network. In these roles, he leads nearly 19,000 total force airmen who plan, develop, deliver, and operate joint interoperable command and control capabilities and defend an enterprise infrastructure in more than 42 countries. When we talk about a resilient digital air and space force, I know, he said keep it short, I'm wrapping up now. But he is the man who knows about a resilient digital air and space force. So ladies and gentlemen, General Skinner.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Okay, good afternoon. I know I got the coveted time slot right after lunch. And so I thought what we would do this afternoon is I have one video and one slide. But before we do that, I want to let everybody know, just as Lauren was able to spend some time with family on her way down here, so was Lisa and I. We got to spend some time with our grandkids, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And the reason I bring that up is because, I have the water with me because my voice is a little hoarse. And if you see me walking around kind of funny, I'm still a little bit sore from the wrestling that we were doing because Grandpa doesn't realize how old he is. And therefore, you will see me kind of screech and scrunch as we walk around. But I was able to spend a little bit of time. It's always great to come to Maxwell, to come to Montgomery and spend some time with family and friends. Because this really is what it's about, right? It is about spending time together because what? Relationships matter. And partnerships matter. And when you look at the government and industry and academia, that's how we are going to stay ahead of the adversary, is us being able to come together, stay together, and get after these complex problems that we have each and every day. Now, before we get in the video, just a couple of insights for you of things that are happening in the DoD level and that are happening in the building today. I will tell you, just as Lauren mentioned this morning, I don't know of any time since I've been in the military, I won't say how long because it's been a long time, to where the CIOs, the SIXs, the PCAs, although they weren't back then, and the joint community is in lockstep with what we are trying to do. That doesn't mean that we all agree with everything in the implementations, but the relationship is as strong as it's ever been. And I will tell you, the relationship between Joe Nakasone and Mr. Sherman from a cyber command and CIO level is very tight. And so you think about the relationship with NSA and the DoD, that's as tight as it has ever been. And so I bring that up just so you know that the relationship is tight, and we're getting after these problems 24 POM, right? Lauren mentioned this morning, right? We're looking for some big things to happen in the 24 POM. What she didn't mention is there are 2 key studies that are going on that CAPE is leading that directly affect each of us, right? First one is user experience. CAPE is leading a study to figure out, okay, what do we need to do, and this is DepSecDef directed, to get after this thing we call user experience and how do we make it better. And we'll talk a little bit about that on the slide. The second one is cybersecurity. The department is focused on making sure that we are cyber resilient. Because if we're not cyber resilient, we will not be successful in the missions that we've been assigned to do. The 3 mission areas under Joe Nakasone, right? Cyberspace operations, offensive cyberspace operations, defensive cyberspace operations, and DODN operations. All 3 of those are being discussed in various forums more than they ever have been. And not just in the cyber arena. That's important because it is cool to be part of cyber. It's cool to be part of this family and this community as we go forward. Zero trust. We'll talk a little about zero trust. I don't know if there's an IT bingo card that doesn't have zero trust in that center block. Right? But each mission partner, each service, each agency is getting after it. Because we know that is at the heart of where we want to go. So those are just some, and I know the 4-letter word, which we'll talk about in a little bit, CCRIs. That's being talked about. SecDef is aware. SecDef is aware of CCRIs and what CCRIs are trying to do from a force standpoint. Those are a bunch of things that are going on. Suffice to say that the things that you are doing on a day-to-day basis, the things that we are partnering with to get at best value is being talked about, heard, and I suspect you will see as we look at the 23 budget, the 24 POM, that you'll see some significant changes to get after these long-standing problems. So with that, we'll do the video and then we'll go from there. Okay. So, let's chat. Okay, as I said earlier, right? We're cool, right? It is cool to be in the cyber world. It's cool to leverage the information technology. It's cool to provide that so that it's protected, secure, and it's connecting our warfighters, our mission partners each and every day. I would offer also that we aren't just making a difference, right? We are making the difference. And it's you, it's each individual here who is making a difference in some form or fashion. So what I ask, before we talk about mission, in order for us to continue making the difference, we've got to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves, right? And that we are taking care of each other. Because if we're not, then who is? And then you cannot take care of others. So I start out every discussion that I have with making sure that we are taking care of ourselves, because we are the ones here who are going to make the difference. It's not the technology, it's not the platforms, it's not the processes, it's not the organizational design, it is us. And so I ask, take care of yourself, because then we can continue delivering on a day-to-day basis. We can continue delivering what the warfighter needs, we can continue delivering what our nation needs each and every day. Okay, in the middle, these are the same priorities that DISA started out with for the last year. Okay, now what has kind of changed? First and foremost, I will tell you that in the DISA senior leadership standpoint, in the last 18 months, we've had about a 90% turnover in our senior leaders. 90%. That's a lot of institutional knowledge that has left, but it's a lot of new knowledge that has come in, and a lot of enthusiasm. And I think that also plays into the great relationship that we have with the services as we continue to move forward. And so we have a great team in my eyes, and for us to be able to continue getting after, that's what we're focused on, and it's those partnerships. And so we got a great senior leadership team that we will continue to highlight. I will tell you from a prioritization standpoint, there is no mission more important than command and control. Why do I say that? Because that's a no-fail mission. Joy, where are you at? Joy Kazar. Okay, right here in the middle, WACA commander. Voice of the president, right? If the president can't talk, or the president can't get a hold of the Secretary of Defense or heads of state, then that's not good. That's not a good day for her, which then isn't a good day for me, which then isn't a good day for others. Right? I think everybody understands that. Secretary of Defense has to be able to communicate and command and control with the combatant commanders, with their counterparts in the Ministry of Defenses. And so their ability to continually command and control and have that ability no matter where they are at, no matter if they are down very low, up very high, it doesn't matter. They got to be able to connect. And that's why that is a no-fail mission, and that's why that will continue to be our number one priority. Force readiness through innovation. Just to innovate for innovation's sake is not good, right? What are you trying to accomplish? And I would offer, how do you take an understanding of the mission, an understanding of technology, bringing that together? That is what's going to set you apart. Understand that mission thread, understand that use case, and drive the change with the technology that you know and understand. Robotics process automation. Lauren talked about that a little bit this morning, right? I would offer, for the most part today, it has been focused on, I'll say, the financial world, the contracting world, the personnel world. How can we leverage RPA for the mission and the mission threads? That's where we could use some help on. How can we leverage automation for those mission threads, not just the support functions? Leveraging data as a center of gravity. Data is the high ground. No offense to Dr. Costas and from a USSF standpoint, but data in my eyes is the center of gravity. It's the high ground, and we've got to own it. We've got to be able to access it at the time and place of our choosing, and we've got to be able to protect it and transport it. So how do we make sure that we put that at the center of everything we do? And we'll talk zero trust, because zero trust is all about the data. Okay, cybersecurity and the user experience. How do you harmonize that? You saw in the video, there wasn't a lot of harmonization with that individual as they threw the endpoint to the side. There still has to be some level of cybersecurity and protection in our systems. But how do you harmonize that? And that's where I'm hoping, and we're working hand in hand with with the services and agencies on this user experience study to really get after continue to improve. 19-point improvement, right? 19-point improvement from an Air Force, from a data standpoint. And we're seeing that throughout the services. We're seeing that throughout the department. And the beauty of what the Air Force has done is they're sharing. So things that the Air Force is learning, they're sharing with others. And that's where the power of all these different initiatives are coming along. Last one I'll offer is empower the workforce. I'm just not talking about the individuals themselves, right? What's the organizational design? DISA went through reorganization 9 months ago. We asked our team, did we get it right? Probably should ask you too. Did we get it right? For the most part, they said we flattened the organization, roles and responsibilities are better understood. It's the processes underneath that have to catch up with that organizational design. You've heard me talk before, institutional silliness, right? Every organization has it, even the Air Force. How do you get after that institutional silliness to drive it away? There was a question this morning, right? How are you going to compete, basically, with others for the talent that's out there? What are some of the incentives? We can't just talk about incentives, right? You got to talk about organizational design too, and the processes. You got to want that place to be the place that people want to come to work. So it can't just be about those incentives. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about Workforce 25. So that's the wrapper around everything that DISA is doing. Today I'm going to talk more from a DISA standpoint, but this applies to JFHQ DODN too. And the work that we're doing with General Kennedy at 16th Air Force now, the things that we're doing with the other service cyber components, and the other 45 DODN area of operations directors and commanders who are responsible for their entire terrain. Because we can't do it ourselves. I think some have heard me talk this before, right? How big is the DODN? Right, the third largest terrain in the world. Right? United States is number 1. I think we can help them take credit for that because we're a big portion of that. Number 2 is China. Number 3 is the DODN. Each one of those addresses, I will say, is a potential attack vector that we've got to make sure we know, understand, and can address. Okay, so what are some of the things that we are doing today? First and foremost, NLCC and NC3 modernization. Autovon. Who's heard of Autovon? Who worked on Autovon? A lot smaller hands, I know that. There are still circuits today that were being leveraged by Autovon back in the 1960s. Those TDM circuits. Now, a couple issues with that. First, it's old. The expertise to continually maintain the resiliency is not there anymore, and if it is, it costs an arm and a leg. So, what do we need to do? Well, we're trying to drive to IP-based circuits, right? How do we do that? With your help and with industry's help. Our NC3 systems today and our NLCC systems today are being leveraged 2 to 3 to 4 times what they have been over the last few years. Significant strain because of the different crises that are going on in the world, because of the strategic competition that we have with China. These systems are being used, and some of them, right, duct tape, twine, making them work. And so huge efforts by our teams and by our personnel to make them work, but we got to modernize them. And that's what we are getting after when it comes to NLCC and NC3. And you will see in the POM process money being put towards these systems to modernize them. Not just the platforms, not just the systems that are overriding them, but the underlying but the underlying systems. Okay, you heard this morning, right? Cloud, cloud, cloud. Let's rush to the cloud. Joint warfighting cloud capability. Contracts will be awarded in December. A long time coming, a lot of great work, working with the services to have this multi-vendor, multi-cloud contract vehicle available for our warfighters, right? That doesn't mean that Cloud One is going away. That doesn't mean Sea Army is going away. This is another opportunity, being able to go directly to the cloud service providers for hosting capability. If you need and or want a systems integrator, that's an option. You can have a system integrator work with the CSP, right? But this also allows the opportunity that if you know what you're doing, you know your application, you know what needs to happen, you do not need to go that path. Also, we will still require and maintain an on-prem capability, right? There has to be a hybrid cloud environment for the future, right? OCONUS strategy, right? We got data sovereignty issues that we will continue to have to work through. And so on the OCONUS cloud strategy, there will be on-prem capabilities. And so how do we work with vendors and industry to have the right hybrid approach as we go forward? That's where we can continue to use your help. And I will tell you, applications is the key in all this. Those legacy applications, right? It's not easy just to plop from the legacy environment to the cloud environment. A lot of times those applications will break. So how do we use DevSecOps? How do we use the software development factories software factories to really get after being able to support the movement of these applications? Because, oh, by the way, in the legacy environment, they're not secure. And so there's inherent security in the cloud that we want to take advantage of. And so please continue to help us drive with those applications. Okay, those who were at TechNet Augusta heard the Army talk about the unified network. Well, from a DoD, from a DISA standpoint, we have DoDNet, right? The Defense Enclave Services Contract, the protest was just upheld a couple months ago. Being able to drive the Fourth Estate network optimization and the Fourth Estate agencies onto a new network, taking lessons learned from ITAS, taking lessons learned from what the Army was doing, and driving that into what we're offering from a DoD network standpoint. Right now, it's focused on NIPRNet and SIPRNet. My question continues to be, why can't it be more than that? Right? What about the yellow side? What about the yellow plus? We should have the same services, the same capabilities. Mobility, which we will talk about in a few minutes, should be part of that offering. Combatant commands today get their service from executive agencies, which the Air Force is executive agent for a few combatant commands. Is this a potential opportunity in the future for combatant commands to be able to leverage this? As a combat support agency, I would think we would be the IT provider of choice for combatant commands. Now, I'm not saying change policy. I'm saying that's something that we will look at as from a department standpoint. Every discussion I have with the industry talks about enterprise licensing. I need to continually ask for your help and support in getting best value from an enterprise license and or licensing as a whole. Giving the Army a better deal than the Air Force, especially in this environment, is probably not a good thing. Let's have consistent best value pricing when it comes to licenses. For example, same reseller, same product, same terms, proposals come in 10, 15, 20, $30 million difference. Because it's under two different contracts. That just doesn't make sense to me. How many times has the government purchased licenses and hasn't used them? Or it takes a year or 2 years to use them. Help us with that. Again, we want to be able to pay for what we're leveraging, but I don't want to pay for something I'm not leveraging. True up. Okay? How many people in this audience think that from a government standpoint, we can true up on a weekly or monthly basis on licensing? Yet we have contracts out there that require a true up on a monthly basis. And what happens? The government pays more for that because the reseller takes additional risk. Help us with those contracts. Because at the end of the day, while we may see some great support in the POM process, we still have to make the most effective use of the resources that we have. And that's the bottom line with that. Okay, the big bingo card right in the middle, right? Zero trusted. Anybody who says that that the Department of Defense is going to be zero trusted, or that this organization will be zero trusted, slap the table, boom, we are done. Wrong answer. There's organizations, I won't say their name, and there's companies who've been on a journey for 10, 12, 13 years, and they're still on that journey. Zero trust is all about the journey and continuing to improve in that journey each and every day. DoD CIO is getting ready to put out a zero trust implementation plan in next month. That talks about, they have a zero trust portfolio team that's working with the services to kind of lay out, hey, here's some initiatives, here's some other things that we want to do to kind of bring all the efforts together. But anybody who doesn't think that we are not already doing some zero trust stuff already, we are. Comply to Connect's a perfect example. I mean, we got millions of endpoints reporting in from a Comply to Connect standpoint today. And that number is increasing each and every day. 6 months ago, it was much less than that. Cloud-based internet isolation, CBII. Right? We're about 70% through with that. The other 30% will come in fiscal year 23. We will be done with that. Something else that is being delivered and will be finished in the next year. That's providing internet protection from a web standpoint. We go on and on about the different zero trust. Thunderdome. I know Thunderdome made a huge splash probably a month ago in the social media world when a 6-month extension was outlined. Is Thunderdome going as fast as I want it to? No. But we want to do this right. And we're going to have a fielding decision by the end of this year of where DISA, at least DISA, is going when it comes to how we're going to take care of the future environment, right? Ms. Knausenberger talked about SD-WAN this morning. That's a key component of this. SASE is a key component. How do we focus on the data, and how do we make sure that from a data standpoint that we are protected, secure, and driving? One thing on cloud that I forgot to mention I want to talk about. Transport. Transport is usually the last thing that you think about from a cloud standpoint, from an artificial intelligence standpoint. That data analytics has to go somewhere. So how do we have agnostic transport from the tactical edge, combat commerce, right, to the strategic? How do we leverage subsea, terrestrial, space, whether it's GEO, LEO? How do we leverage that autonomously to make sure that the transport is always there? How do we leverage co-location, right, with industry and with the vendors? But it can't just be in today's benign environment, right? It has to be in a contested environment and in a bad day. That's what we've got to make sure that we're able to do. Okay, I think we talked a lot about zero trust. Okay, strategic program assessments. For those who know, who've heard me talk this before, these are the SPA days. as we like to call them within the agency. This is where every program manager gets to come in and have a day at the spa in relation to their program. First question we ask, is this program still needed? Second question we ask, if they say yes, where's it in writing? Who directed it? Who requested it? Who approved it? What was the resourcing around it? Has that resourcing profile changed? Has the requirements changed? We're through about half of the programs, and most of the programs are going through 2 to 3 times. And what I will tell you, and I think you've seen this, we are decommissioning plenty of programs. DEPS-U is next. DEE-U, 1 October-ish. DEEC, as we look at IL-6 and 365 IL-6, DEEC will be next after that. GVS-U, decommissioned. Had a good discussion with Dr. Costas this morning on Skyweb as another example. A program that was 2004 that's still being partially leveraged today. But at the end of the day, it's about best value. And some of these programs, the user base has significantly decreased, and the cost of them because of the legacy environment is just cost prohibitive. Now, what you can't forget about is the PACE plan, right? You've still got to have a PACE plan for some of these capabilities. And so working with industry, I need your help to make sure that we don't lose sight of the ability to have a PACE plan for a lot of these capabilities. So that's where we are with the spas. Still going through them, a lot of great work, but you've seen that we are divesting programs. We're going back to the original requirements document to make sure that those are updated so that we can provide best value across the board. Mobility and collaboration. I mentioned IL-6 365. We're expecting that in the first part of the year. Pretty powerful. IL-5 365. I mean, everybody's using it today, right? The number of Teams chats, the number of Teams channels is growing each month. Now, do we have some hiccups going from tenant to tenant? Yes. We're working that with the vendor to make sure that we can get after that to make it more seamless, and that really gets at the user experience. Mobility, right? Mobile force. It doesn't matter if it's unclass, secret, top secret. Force wants to be more mobile. We've done a great job when it comes to the unclassified side. We're getting there on the secret side. TS is still kind of I'll say a work in progress. But that's what the force wants and needs, especially to be agile and dynamic, as you heard Q High Note talk this morning about the threat. And I know being the warm-up that Ms. Knothenberger and I, the front stage setters for the chief and the secretary to tomorrow, I know they will talk a lot about the threat and the discussions that they're having at the senior leader level. Culture. Wow. Culture eats strategy for dinner, right? It eats plans for dinner. I will tell you there is a fundamental shift in culture across the department that's really focused from a cyber standpoint. CCRIs is just the one example of where we're seeing the culture shift. Yes, we have isolated organizations due to CCRI results. But I will tell you, it's not necessarily the CCRI result itself. The inability to control access to the warfighting network, the inability to see and understand what the risks are, and therefore know what the risks you're accepting either on your behalf or on the rest of the department. Is it censored correctly? And we didn't really talk about censoring, but censoring you have to know. End of life, end of service equipment, whether it's hardware and or software. I would offer during COVID that there was a significant impact from COVID from the ability to operate, secure, and maintain the systems that we have for a variety of reasons. And so we have that tech debt, and we have the software and hardware debt that we are driving forward through. And so as Ms. Knossenberger talked earlier about additional resources, a lot of that is going towards that tech debt and the end-of-life, end-of-service capabilities. User experience. Whew. You could have a whole briefing on that one, right? But I'll tell you, if it was a simple answer, it had already been fixed. Think of all the things that go into that experience from where you are at your endpoint, working through the system, whatever system that is, could be commercial, could be DoD provided, getting after the data, the applications. There are so many different hops and systems and security in relation to that it's hard to pinpoint it. One of the things that we are doing, in fact, I had a kickoff this morning with our team, is a blue on blue down week. What does that mean? It's almost like a safety down day, except for a week. That doesn't mean we're not going to make changes, but for the next week, internal to the agency, we are going through and working through JRSS issues. We're working through GFUD and the global directory. How do we have our processes in place? Do we have all the right roles and responsibilities? Does everybody know what the reporting criteria is? Why are we doing that? Because once we have our house in order, or better, then we're going to come to the services, and we're going to work through them and go, okay, JRSS, perfect example, although going to be sunset here in the next 5 years. What are the roles and responsibilities so that we make sure we don't have blue on blue? Murphy will happen. No matter what, Murphy will be there. And the adversary will be there in the future. We've got to minimize that blue on blue as much as possible. And that's what we're focusing on to get after the user experience. We're replacing computers just like the Air Force. We're looking at the configuration changes that need to be made to continue to help. We're increasing bandwidth where necessary. All those things kind of go into this. But I will tell you, applications. Are they scalable? Were they designed for an enterprise or for a small campus? Whenever I talk to small business, the one question I ask them is, can you scale to the department's requirement? That's the first question, because you've got to be able to scale. Okay, Workforce 2025. To me, while prioritizing command and control is the number one mission priority, the people are the number one priority. And how do we retool, reskill, retain the right skill set for tomorrow's environment? A person asked me the other day, what is the number one thing that you would want educated or trained for the workforce? Their first question was, I thought it'd be technology based. Nope. Critical thinking. I think every single schoolhouse, every single course, every single educational institution should focus on critical thinking. Critical thinking can help make the complex simple. The simpler you can make something, the easier it is to understand what the problem really is and get after the root cause. Technology is great, don't get me wrong, but it's got to be critical thinking. And if you got ideas of how to do that, I'm all ears, because I think that will help our workforce, because the world's a complex environment today. It's going to be more dynamic and more complex, and taking care of that is at the heart of. We've got technical debt. Okay, workforce, they want to work from home, right? During COVID, a lot worked from home. The question I've asked our team every time that we're talking about the location of an individual working, it's got to be three things. First and foremost, can you do your job? And can you do it effectively? Secondly, are you a burden to others? Because you are not in a certain place, wherever that place may be, is that putting a burden on somebody else because they are there and they have to do it? The third one, which I'd offer, is just as important as the other two. Can you still mentor and lead the force? To include the new people to the organization, the new people to the department, the new airmen or guardians that are coming into the service. Can you mentor them and lead them to be the next generation leaders that we have? If you can answer yes to all three of those, then you can have a good conversation. But without that, I think it's short-sighted with some of the decisions that are being made from where individuals will and can work from. So Workforce 2025 is a focus that I put on our personnel team to how do we better recruit, retain, and professionally develop the force that we have, first and foremost, but the force that we need, just as important. Okay, I think I have about 9 minutes left. I think I'll kind of wrap it up with, there's a lot going on in the department. There's a lot going on across the board, and we are not going to get where we need to be except without the partnerships and the relationships that are being built here, that are being validated here as we meet, but also when you go back home to your locations, and making sure that all of us understand what each and everyone's doing, the roles and responsibilities are understood, the right authorities are understood, and then get after the mission. So with that, I'll turn over for questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We'll be taking questions from the booth. So our first question for General Skinner. And a reminder to attendees, you can submit questions to DAFITC2022@gmail.com.
General Skinner, you mentioned DISA has seen a 90% turnover in its senior leadership over the last 18 months. Why is this? What kind of leadership is DISA bringing in now, and what wasn't working before?
Yeah. Oof. I cannot take any credit or blame for all of that. No. So I will tell you, some of it was individuals had been with the organization or been in the department for 40-some years, and it was time for them to move on to other opportunities, some full retirement, some with industry. That was part of it. Some were looking at the landscape and thought that their talents would be better leveraged in other places. And so what we've done is really focused on what is the talent that is needed for tomorrow's fight. And that's what we've been focusing on in driving the organization forward. And so as we look at what is needed organizational design-wise and personnel-wise, those are the individuals that, and we have individuals coming from external within the department. We have individuals that have taken over from industry, and we also have individuals internally that we promoted. So it's been a mix of all these individuals, or all these types of individuals as we've gone forward. But like Mr. Montemurano, I think 45 years he was in the agency, and he retired right before I got there. So I can't take credit for that one. Or blame.
Sir, what are the successes and challenges DISA and JFHQ Doden have experienced with implementing innovation at scale? What lessons can you provide?
Innovation at scale. So here's what I think the first and foremost is understanding the individual or the organizations that we are working with and vendors that we're working with, can they scale? As I mentioned, that's the number one question that we have to ask. The second one I would offer is our acquisition process does not enable rapid acquisition and potential, rapid failure, right? I mean, there are certain things that, fail fast and continue moving. I would offer either the the rules aren't there for us to be successful in driving this, or we're not leveraging the rules effectively. So I would ask industry to help answer that question, right? What are some of the things that you see the government is doing that is inhibiting your ability to scale fast, and help us help ourselves by relooking at whatever the rules, the authorities, because I would offer, we got a lot of authorities that we're not leveraging well enough, and I think industry knows better than that. The final piece I would say is risk managed versus risk averse. We know the RMF process, right? That's another 4-letter word to many individuals and organizations. How can we become more true risk managed versus risk averse in the things that we are trying to do?
Sir, what are your thoughts on open source software? Can DoD utilize it to reduce license costs and sole source vendor dependencies?
I would say yes in certain circumstances and instances. And I think that's a case-by-case basis, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, there's some missions that are no-fail. And so you've got to really look hard at the open source and go, does it make sense for this mission? There's other missions that I think we can go wholeheartedly in.
As DISA stands up a new cloud contract, how do we manage the department's growing cyber attack surface?
Very carefully. No, so I think there's a multitude of ways. First and foremost, cloud has inherent security and capabilities in it already. That's first and foremost. The second one is how do you, whether it's cyber protection teams, whether it's mission defense teams, whether it's our operators, how do you make them more cloud savvy in protecting that cloud terrain? How do you leverage technology, right? Censoring. I would offer our censoring isn't very good today in being able to see the entirety of the cyber terrain. And so bringing all those three things together, I think really gets at the heart of being able to secure that attack surface. And it goes back to the first slide that Ms. Knotzenberger showed this morning, right? Basic blocking and tackling. I think that falls into there.
General Skinner, complete this sentence. You can't spell X without DISA.
Disamazing.
General Skinner, you briefly talked about innovation from the user level. Are there plans to implement a DevSecOps environment on NIPR, SIPR, and high-side systems for users to develop critical modern software solutions accessible to the entire enterprise?
Yes. Do you need more? Yes.
Okay.
So here's the bottom line, right? You have to take security in mind, but you've got to get to a DevSecOps in any environment, right? The old waterfall model isn't where we need to go and or need to be. And when you have application developers and you have security professionals and you have network operations professionals and operators who are on different systems, then give them the tools and the capabilities and the processes to do that on those different systems. Because I would offer a SAP network or a TS network or a secret network is more important than what we're doing on the NIPRNet. And so why wouldn't we take advantage of those? While understanding there's uniqueness in each of the different systems that we have, but we've got to.
And our final question, what are some IT and cyber efforts from other services that the Air Force should emulate?
Ooh, the Air Force is leading. Right? Not to put anyone else out. Here's what I would just say, Each service has specific things that they've been working on and that they are driving, right? Army's talking about the unified network, right? As the Air Force is doing ITAS and Wave 1, they're already having lessons learned. As the cloud instantiations are set up, they're already learning from each other. As we kind of talk about JADC2, for example, I think that's where the different services can really learn from each other of what the other one is doing, because at the end of the day, it's all got to interoperate, and I would say integrate. And it's probably not where it needs to be. And I would offer JADC2 is at the heart of our warfighting, which is what we're all about. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for your day. Have a good day.
Hold on just a second. Thank you, sir. At this time, I'd like to invite Ms. Knossenberger to provide a small memento of thanks.
All right. Am I on? Not quite? All right.
There you are.
All right. General Skinner, Bob, you are the first person that I'm publicly presenting our new CIO coin to. And if you look up, you'll see what it looks like. But it makes a whole lot of sense because you are, in fact, a transformer for our Air Force and our department, and it's been an honor to serve with you.
Thanks,